Welcome back to Global Crypto, the channel where the biggest moves in digital finance get broken down so you always stay ahead of the curve. Today we are covering something that every serious XRP holder and crypto investor needs to hear right now, because in the last 48 hours, two major developments have hit the space that could completely reshape how the world looks at XRP. We are talking about an official NYSE filing with the SEC and a serious warning from one of the most pro-crypto senators in the United States government. If you have been watching XRP from the sidelines wondering whether this asset is ready for its next big chapter, what happened in the last 2 days might just answer that question for you. So stay locked in, because this one is packed with information you do not want to miss, and we are just getting started. Let us kick things off with the news that genuinely stopped the crypto community in its tracks. The New York Stock Exchange, the largest and most powerful stock exchange on the entire planet, filed an official rule change with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and in that filing, XRP was formally listed as an eligible commodity, not a security, not some vague, undefined digital token, but a commodity, placed directly in the same category as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. Now think about what that actually means for a moment. This is not some small regional exchange or a startup brokerage throwing out labels. This is the New York Stock Exchange, an institution that has been the backbone of global financial markets for over 2 centuries. When they put something in writing, go through the legal review process, and submit it formally to the SEC, that is as official as it gets in the world of traditional finance. This is the establishment recognizing XRP in a way that simply cannot be ignored. The reason this classification is such a game changer is because it touches almost every part of how XRP gets used in the financial world going forward. When the NYSE calls XRP a commodity in an official filing, it changes the conversation in boardrooms across Wall Street. Banks, asset managers, hedge funds, and pension funds all operate based on clearly defined legal categories. They need to know whether something is a security or a commodity before they can legally hold it, trade it, or build products around it. For years, the ambiguity around XRP's legal status kept a lot of institutional money on the sidelines. Compliance teams could not sign off on it. Legal departments flagged it as too risky. But now, with the world's most respected exchange putting that commodity label in a formal regulatory filing, the argument for staying out of XRP becomes a lot harder to make. Institutions now have a very serious piece of documentation they can point to when making the case internally for XRP exposure. Crypto researcher and well-known XRP analyst Ripple Bull Winkle was one of the first voices to connect the dots between these two major developments, and the way he framed it really puts everything into perspective. He pointed out that the NYSE filing and Senator Cynthia Lummis's warning at Bitcoin 2026 are not just two separate events happening around the same time. They are two pieces of the same, much larger puzzle that is being assembled right now in Washington and on Wall Street. On one side, you have the regulatory framework being pushed through Congress with a real sense of urgency. On the other side, you have legacy financial institutions like the NYSE already moving ahead and positioning themselves for a crypto-friendly future. Both of these things happening at the same time is not a coincidence. It is a signal that the institutional and political momentum behind XRP and the broader crypto market is building faster than most people realize, and those who pay attention now are going to be in a far better position than those who wait. Now let us talk about what Senator Cynthia Lummis actually said at Bitcoin 2026, because her words carried a level of urgency that the crypto community needs to take seriously. Lummis stood up and told the crowd that right now, in this very moment, the House, the Senate, and the White House are all aligned on moving forward with crypto legislation. She was very direct about how rare that kind of three-way alignment actually is in Washington, D.C. Anyone who follows American politics knows that getting all three branches moving in the same direction on any piece of legislation is genuinely unusual. Political windows like this open up and then they close, sometimes for years at a time. Lummis made it clear that if Congress does not push through meaningful crypto regulation while this window is open, the opportunity could slip away and not return until the end of the decade. That is a warning that the entire industry needs to hear, and it adds a real sense of importance to everything happening right now with the Clarity Act. So what exactly is the Clarity Act, and why does it matter so much for XRP? The Clarity Act is a piece of legislation currently moving through Congress that is designed to do something the crypto space has needed for a very long time, which is create a clear and legally binding definition of what makes a digital asset a commodity versus a security. This distinction is not just a technicality. It determines which government agency has authority over a particular token, how exchanges can legally list it, how banks are allowed to interact with it, and how much institutional money can flow into it. For XRP, this matters enormously because the confusion around its legal status has been one of the biggest roadblocks to mainstream adoption. If the Clarity Act passes and XRP is definitively classified as a commodity under federal law, it removes one of the last major barriers keeping big money from fully committing to this asset. The regulatory uncertainty that has shadowed XRP for years could finally be resolved in a single piece of legislation. But here's the part of this story that should honestly concern every single person in the crypto space. Senator Lummis was not speaking in vague terms when she gave her warning. She said very directly that if this bill does not get passed while the current political alignment exists, new legislation might not come until 2030. Let that sink in for a second. We are talking about potentially 6 more years of regulatory gray areas, 6 more years of institutions sitting on the fence, 6 more years of legal battles and compliance headaches that slow down real adoption. The entire crypto market has been waiting for clarity from Washington for years already, and the idea that this window could close and not reopen until the end of the decade is not something anyone should take lightly. This is not a drill, and Senator Lummis is not someone who exaggerates for effect. She has been one of the most consistent and credible voices for crypto in the United States Senate, and when she says the clock is ticking, the smart move is to listen. Now let us shift gears a little and talk about what is actually happening on the XRP Ledger right now, because beyond all the regulatory and political news, there is real on-chain activity that is telling a very important story. Just recently, a transaction involving Ripple's stablecoin RLUSD settled $59 million worth of value on the XRP Ledger, and the total fee for that entire transaction was just $0.000188. Read that number again. $59 million moved across the network for less than a fraction of a single cent. That is not a theoretical use case or a marketing slide from a Ripple presentation. That is a real transaction that actually happened, and it demonstrates in the most concrete way possible that the XRP Ledger is already being used for serious, large-scale financial activity right now in the real world. What makes that $59 million transaction so significant is the context around it. There are still people out there who argue that XRP is purely speculative, that it is just another coin being traded back and forth without any real-world utility behind it. But a settlement of that size, at that speed, at that cost, is the clearest possible counter-argument to that narrative. Traditional wire transfers for amounts like that can take days, involve multiple correspondent banks, rack up hundreds or even thousands of dollars in fees, and still carry the risk of delays or errors. The XRP Ledger handled the same job in seconds for essentially nothing. That kind of efficiency is not just impressive in a technical sense. It is the kind of performance that makes financial institutions sit up and start asking very serious questions about why they are still using the old infrastructure when something this powerful already exists. This brings us to one of the most talked about parts of the story that Ripple Bull Winkle shared, which is the price model he put together showing how XRP could grow based on different levels of real-world adoption. The model lays out 5 different possible outcomes, and the range is genuinely staggering. At the conservative end of the scale, you are looking at a 12 times increase from current price levels, which would already be a life-changing return for anyone holding a meaningful position in XRP right now. But as adoption grows and XRP takes on a bigger role in global financial infrastructure, the model suggests the upside could go all the way up to 13,000 times current levels. Now that number sounds almost impossible to believe, and it is important to understand that this is a model based on assumptions about future adoption, not a prediction or a guarantee of any kind. But the logic behind it is worth understanding. The reason the lower end of that model is tied to existing use cases is because XRP is already doing real work right now. Cross-border payments, business transfers, and on-chain settlements using RLUSD are all happening on the XRP Ledger today. That baseline activity gives the lower price targets a concrete foundation to stand on. They are not based on hope or speculation about something that might happen someday. They are based on what is already happening and how that activity scales over time as more users and institutions join the network. This is an important distinction because it means XRP's value proposition does not depend entirely on some future event that has not happened yet. There is already a real engine running under the hood, and the question is simply how much fuel gets added to it over the next few years. The higher end of that price model, the truly massive targets that stretch toward 13,000 times current levels, are tied to a scenario that is becoming increasingly hard to dismiss as pure fantasy. That scenario is one where a significant portion of global financial activity moves from traditional banking rails onto blockchain networks, and XRP becomes the primary bridge asset connecting all of those networks together. Think about the sheer volume of money that flows through the global financial system every single day. We are talking about trillions of dollars moving between banks, across borders, between currencies, and through different financial instruments. Right now, all of that activity runs through a system of correspondent banks, SWIFT messages, and settlement networks that were built decades ago and have not fundamentally changed since. If even a small fraction of that volume begins moving on-chain, and XRP is positioned as the liquidity bridge in the middle of those transactions, the demand for XRP would be on a scale that the current market simply cannot fully price in. It is also worth talking about the broader picture of what it would mean for XRP to become that kind of bridge asset at a global scale. Right now, when a bank in one country needs to send money to a bank in another country, they typically need to hold pre-funded accounts in multiple currencies at correspondent banks around the world. That is an enormous amount of capital just sitting still, doing nothing, waiting to facilitate transactions. XRP was specifically designed to eliminate that problem. Instead of holding pre-funded accounts everywhere, a financial institution could simply hold XRP, use it as a real-time bridge between any two currencies, and complete the transaction in seconds at almost no cost. The efficiency gains are not marginal. They are the kind of structural improvement that fundamentally changes how global finance operates, and that is exactly why institutions are paying attention right now. As all of this plays out, it is worth taking a look at where XRP is trading right now to give everything proper context. At the time of this recording, XRP is sitting around $1.38, which reflects a slight pullback over the last 24 hours. Now, in the short term, that kind of minor dip can feel discouraging if you are watching the charts closely every day. But when you step back and look at the bigger picture, the price today is almost beside the point compared to the structural developments that are happening around it. The NYSE filing, the Clarity Act push in Congress, the real on-chain transaction volume, and the growing institutional interest are all pieces of a foundation being built right now. Short-term price movements happen in every market, but foundations like the one forming around XRP right now do not get built and then disappear. They build slowly, and then they matter all at once. Before we wrap this up, let us bring everything together one more time because there is a lot happening simultaneously, and it all connects in a way that is genuinely exciting for anyone who has been following XRP for any length of time. You have the NYSE putting XRP in a commodity filing alongside Bitcoin and Ethereum, which is the kind of institutional legitimacy that money managers across Wall Street use to justify getting involved. You have Senator Lummis standing at Bitcoin 2026 warning that the political window for the Clarity Act is open right now, but may not stay open forever. You have $59 million settling on the XRP Ledger for less than a fraction of a cent, proving real utility in real time. And you have a price model suggesting that if global finance begins moving on-chain and XRP captures even a portion of that market, the upside from current levels is almost beyond what most investors are mentally prepared to consider. All of that happening at the same time is not noise. That is a signal. That is everything for today here on Global Crypto. If this video gave you something to think about, do us a favor and hit that like button, because it genuinely helps more people find this content and stay informed during what could be one of the most important periods in crypto history. Subscribe if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown like this one. The space is moving fast right now, and we are going to be right here covering every major development as it happens. Thank you so much for watching, stay sharp out there, and we will see you in the next one.